This is Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr of the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. So today's surprise topic is the city of Pompeii, and I think it's called the Lost City of Pompeii, but I've got myself kind of confused inside my head, so it doesn't even matter. But we so I thought what we do is kind of go over the history that we've been told, and then maybe I'll ask you some questions.
Okay.
Right, because usually some pretty good stuff comes out. So, the city of Pompeii is like it actually is bigger than that one city, but it's Pompeii, which is near Naples, Italy, which is kind of in the front ankle part of the boot of Italy. Okay. It was buried in roughly 4 to 6 feet of volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius erupting about 79 AD. And again, we know history is corrupt, so who knows what the truth is there. So Mount Vesuvius erupted and supposedly buried the whole area, buried everybody, and everyone was killed instantly doing whatever they were doing, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I did look a few things up just for fun. At the time, I'm sorry, Pompeii had between 10 and 20,000 residents, which is a huge number of people,
Yes.
right? That's a lot of people. And they were affluent. So these were not just like, we'll call them the country bumpkins way back then. These were Roman citizens that valued art, all sorts of things because they're excavating paintings, theaters, architecture, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they were supposedly all instantly killed. Um, the site was undisturbed for hundreds of years and then it was looted and went into decay, et cetera, et cetera. And then it was finally excavated. Now, here's what I thought interesting. So I did research this briefly, like weeks ago. It's now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay, woo, that sends up a red flag for me immediately. And it's a United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It's their property now, and it's kind of like a museum in process. They're doing the excavation, but you can basically buy tickets to tour it, right? You did go through Pompeii when you were a teen. All right. Do you
Yep.
want to talk about you can talk about the story, but give us your personal impressions and then anything else that might vary from the story?
So, I mean, being there in person, it's pretty interesting. I mean, just being near the columns and walking through, you do see some mummified beings
Yeah.
that they have found. They have them behind glass. So you do see a lot about what they have found on the site. Um, Now, I was definitely a teen back then, and some of it's kind of escaped me, but I definitely remember, walking down the stones. You get to see where people had like bathed and how their culture was at that point in
Yeah.
time. So it's very different from, how we imagine it in our head and being there in person. We see pictures, we're told stories, but it's always different being there in person.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing that I do want to say is it definitely wasn't volcanic issues. Um, Now, it was covered in volcanic ash, but there's a reason this volcano went off. Now, it was fine for a very long time, then all of a sudden it started to go off and then almost instantly kill people. So there's a few red flags within that. But there is something within Pompeii that they wanted, and they also
Oh.
wanted to try out some new technology at the time. Now, one thing we don't really talk about is technology within each time frame. But one thing that is clear between every, you know, few years and or centuries is they try out new ways to kill us. So, what they were doing was actually experimentation on a way to wipe out civilization. hence being the volcanic ash. Now, it wasn't necessarily supposed to just give volcanic ash. They did want to wipe out the society, but the, let's say, eruption went awry, and actually wiped out the people that were experimenting also. So it was a really bad experiment. Um, that's why it was, not, discovered earlier, because their plan was, let's wipe them out. We're testing this out, and then we can blame it on this. Then we can start to dig for what we need. Now they're saying that it's under their protection and they can do what they need on the site without other people interfering, because if you try to interfere, you're going against them. So it's a really complicated issue, but there is something underneath Pompeii. And they were very wealthy, knowledgeable people, but they were able to stabilize a civilization within what they had. They didn't really need to go out, they were sustainable. And that's what a lot of civilizations are actually lacking. They're not sustaining themselves. They have to look elsewhere to sustain those
Right,
lifestyles.
right. Okay, so boom. I kind of knew what you were going to say already because we were guided to do this. And
Mhm.
I did very, very brief research. And when I saw that UNESCO, I'm like, ah. And
Yeah.
all I could see is kind of like a dew coming down, like a directed energy weapon, and them hammering that site. And, back then we think they were more primitive than we were. I don't know. But who's to say it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying, this was not created by a natural volcanic eruption,
Correct.
right? Okay, so was the volcano basically used in some fashion to, like, did they somehow make it erupt to cover the town? Is that what happened?
Their lab is actually in the volcano. Yeah. So they used it as coverage. Who's going to go look at a volcano?
Nobody.
So,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it reminds me of like some cartoon or something where there's a lab in the volcano. But
Mhm.
so basically, what they did is they were creating this weapon and it backfired and they got killed as well as the townspeople.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So when we're told the story, we think of these guys as country bumpkins. There's like 20 people in the town. It was just a freak thing a long time ago, and how horrible, right? But when
Mhm.
I saw 10 to 20,000 people were residents of the town, that they were affluent in society, and then I saw the UNESCO, I knew something was up with this.
Mhm.
So now, so basically, the story about the people being wiped out was true. What you're saying, the perpetrators were also wiped out, which is why it took so long for anyone to figure this out, right?
Yes.
And someone still knows there's something in that area, which is why they're still excavating.
Exactly.
What chaps my butt is they're excavating on, let's say, the tourist dollars. So
Oh yeah.
people go there and they pay money, and of course they can't go in certain sections. They're paying the salaries of these excavators.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Did any people get away from this eruption or calamity?
No, it looks like anybody that got close to getting away was wiped out.
Okay. Okay.
So it was
See,
kind of like they did have a backup system that came into play. Those people that were backup system also, got ex-nayed.
it's not funny, but they got instant karma, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the thing about karma, is you never know when it's gonna hit.
Yeah, like why would you think about wiping out people? That's horrible, no matter what
Yeah.
time frame in history it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Horrible. Okay. So I'm gonna go off on a little side topic. In the excavations, there's artwork that shows various mystical creatures like centaurs and things like that. There's angelics and blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
Back then, did that society, like, were they familiar with these mystical or mythical creatures and mythology?
Yes.
Okay.
So one thing about mythology was most of these creatures were actually alive. Now, it's hard for us to image that because they're not here right now. But as we know, as we progress with life, things change. Right now, we're in extinction era, so we're getting rid of stuff. Not that we want to, but because that's what's happening. So they had these mythical creatures. When something seems different, out of place, might have magical powers, people are going to want it. What happens when somebody wants it? They end up killing it so they can get a specific part that is going to help them so and so.
Right. Right. Okay. So we're, let's say, centaurs, which are basically part man, part
Mhm.
horse. They were around back then.
Yes.
Yeah. And so would you consider centaurs good or bad?
I mean, it's like everything. There's good and bad. For the most
Right.
part, they were actually good.
Okay.
Most mythical, well, actually, most most beings in general are good. It depicts if they go good or bad based off of their upbringing. So when somebody is brought up through negative values, that's when you have that shift happening
Yeah.
because they think it's okay.
Yeah.
They have been mishandled, so they think it's okay.
Yeah.
And you've seen that even with humans, when somebody comes in and they start to bring in this negative energy, that's when things start to shift. So, yes, most beings are on the good side. It just depends on how they were brought up, what situations did they go through as a being that might have made them bad.
Okay. So did this town, Pompeii, and the surrounding area, did they have centaurs at that time?
They had a few, yes.
Okay. And did they coexist?
Yes. It wasn't abnormal. It was mythical creatures. I mean, it's not even depicted just within that society. It's a lot of different societies that have, dragons in their writing, unicorns in some way, shape, or form. They have existed.
Yeah.
They just have been extinct for mostly propaganda, getting whatever they need from it
Yeah.
and exploiting it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting. So basically, they had artwork just depicting the statues and things. And you can see that on some of the websites if you research it. I did, like I said, I didn't spend a lot of time with it, but it just gave me another twist to the story. Now, do you think the centaurs, which were also wiped out then, okay,
Yeah.
were they what we'll call them the perpetrators were after?
No, they were after something different.
Was it technology related? Uh,
From what I'm gathering, the biggest thing people are after is dirt. And I know that sounds weird,
yeah.
but it's minerals within dirt. So
Ah,
crystals, gold, silver, you have to mine it. So imagine there's this really amazing substance built or hidden beneath a whole city. And there's no way for you to actually get into that dirt to excavate and get that material out because 20,000 people, you're not going to be able to get by. People are going to notice, people are going to be interested, and then people are going to want a cut because
right,
it's under their territory.
right.
So that's kind of how it started. There is something within the dirt itself.
Interesting, huh? I've already got my answer, but how interesting is this? All right. See, again, we're given a story that's an interesting story, but it's a
Mhm.
point in history that affects us going future.
Yeah,
So again, again, this was a really long time ago. And again, we know history has been corrupted, but a really long time ago that they were wiping us out, trying to grab the resources.
exactly.
Mm-mm-mm. Okay. Are there any other questions about this story that I haven't asked that I should? Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you guys have questions, just put it below in the
Yeah.
comments. And then right now I feel like that's it,
It's
but
a
there could
good
always be more.
it's a good overview, but again, you go I had to look up what UNESCO was, okay? Because I already said thought UN organized, and I'm like, That can't be good already. So this is a fascinating story, and you've kind of confirmed my suspicions once we were told to
Yeah.
do it. So
Hmm.
thanks.
Of
Yeah.
course.
All right. Well, I guess what I'd say to those watching this is if you have more questions about this specific story, put them in the comments and I'll try to collect them for our next Q&A.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deanna. Appreciate your time.
Of course.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.